The 10 best Dividend Kings to own in 2025 are: Number 1, Cincinnati Financial, ticker symbol CINF. Number 2, Granger, ticker symbol GWW. Number 3, Walmart, ticker symbol WMT. Number 4, Parker Hannifin, ticker symbol PH. Number 5, Farmers and Merchants Bancorp, ticker symbol FMCB. Number 6, RPM International, ticker symbol RPM. Number 7, Colgate, ticker symbol CL. Number 8, MSA Safety Incorporated, ticker symbol MSA. Number 9, ADP, ticker symbol ADP. And number 10, S&P Global, ticker symbol SPGI. But the more important question is, why are these 10 Dividend Kings the best Dividend Kings for 2025? Well, in my opinion, they are the highest quality Dividend Kings based on my custom quality score. My custom quality score considers 6 financial metrics: the dividend growth rate, the payout ratio, the revenue growth rate, the return on invested capital, the free cash flow growth rate, and the gross profit margin. And it assigns a score for each company. And the reason why I believe these are the best Dividend Kings to own in 2025 is because I backtested my quality score over the last 9 years. And the backtest showed a positive correlation between the quality score and the total return generated by the Dividend Kings. Let me show you that analysis so you can see exactly how well the Dividend Kings did. The premise is quite simple. I used the quality score from the current year to figure out which Dividend Kings to own in the following year. So for example, the Dividend Kings with the highest quality scores in 2015 were purchased and held for the duration of 2016. And then I repeated the same process, used the quality scores from 2016 to find the best Dividend Kings for 2017, and so forth. The total return of investing in all of the Dividend Kings between 2016 and 2024 was 159.17%, or a CAGR of 11.16%. That's a pretty decent return for a bunch of mature dividend growth stocks. However, the S&P 500, as measured by the SPY ETF, performed better with a total return of 235.26%, or a CAGR of 14.39%. Now, if I used my quality score to find the 10 best Dividend Kings each year, this test portfolio would generate a total return of 237.95%, or a CAGR of 14.49%. That's about 1.4x the return of all the Dividend Kings, and 1.01x with the return of SPY, so just barely better than the S&P. Down here, you can see the 10 Dividend Kings that were chosen each year. Now, if we trim this portfolio to just the 9 best Dividend Kings, the return actually gets a little bit worse, with the total return dropping to 215.58%. If we lower the number of chosen Dividend Kings down to 8, the return gets a little bit better, but not as good as the top 10 Dividend Kings. Dropping the number of chosen Kings down to 7 gets us an even better return than the 10 Dividend Kings, with the total return now being 244.43%, or a CAGR of 14.73%. So a little bit better than 1.5 times the return of all the Dividend Kings, and about 1.04 times the return of the S&P 500. Trimming this portfolio to just the top 6 Dividend Kings each year improves the total return to 261.37%, or a CAGR above 15% now. That's about 1.6 times the performance of all the Dividend Kings, and 1.11 times the performance of the S&P 500. Now, a portfolio of just the top 5 Dividend Kings each year improves our return again, up to 282.88%, or a CAGR above 16%. That's 1.78x the return of all the Dividend Kings, and 1.2x the return of the S&P 500. If we trim the number of chosen Dividend Kings down to just the top 4, the returns improve quite a bit, up to 325.63% as the total return, or a CAGR above 17%. Now, this portfolio is a full 2.05x above all the Dividend Kings, and 1.38x the S&P 500. Now, a pretty concentrated portfolio of just the top 3 Dividend Kings each year improves our return to 400.49%, or a CAGR above 19%. This test portfolio generated 2.5 times the return of all the Dividend Kings, and 1.7 times the return of the S&P 500. If we go down to just the top 2 Dividend Kings each year, we generate a return of 586.13%, or a CAGR of nearly 24%. Now we're generating 3.68 times the return of all the Dividend Kings, and about 2.5 times the return of the S&P 500. And we can see down here that this portfolio would actually outperform the S&P 500 every year except for 2020. In total, giving us a 350% higher return, or about 9.5% better per year. Investing in just the top 1 Dividend King each year would give us the best portfolio with a total return of 632.67% or a CAGR of 24.77%. That's nearly 4 times the return of all the Dividend Kings and about 2.7 times the return of the S&P 500. Again, we can see that this portfolio would beat the S&P 500 during every single year except for 2016. In total, we would see a return of nearly 400% more, or 10.38% higher per year. And the chosen Dividend Kings were AbbVie in 2016, S&P Global in 2017 and 2018, Illinois Toolworks in 2019, S&P Global again in 2020 and 21, Nordson in 2022, Nucor in 2023, and ADP in 2024. I don't know if this pattern will continue to repeat in future years, but there was a pretty clear correlation between higher quality scores and higher total returns. And the analysis I just showed you suggested that a more concentrated portfolio, focusing on the best Dividend Kings each year, generated a better total return. If you found a way to invest in the best Dividend King each year, and you were able to do this for the last 9 years, you would generate a total return above 10,000%, or a CAGR of 67%. This hypothetical portfolio would turn a $10,000 investment into over $1 million today. On the flip side, if you're the unluckiest person in the world and you just happen to pick the worst Dividend King to invest in every single year, you'd have a total return of minus 94%, or a negative 27% CAGR. And this would turn a $10,000 investment into just $770 today. On average, all of the Dividend Kings would slightly more than double your investment during the last 9 years, turning a $10,000 investment into roughly $20,794. Now, the odds of picking the best Dividend Kings are not great. Today we have 54 Dividend Kings, and the odds of picking the single best dividend stock out of 54 stocks are about 1.85%. Those are not great odds, but they're not terrible either. However, that's just picking one stock during 1 year. The odds of picking the best Dividend King each year for 9 years are 1 in 3.9 quadrillion. Suffice it to say, it's nearly impossible to randomly pick the best Dividend King each year for 9 consecutive years. If we look at the total returns for all of the Dividend Kings from the last decade, there were a total of 19 Dividend Kings that generated a 10-year CAGR above 10%, and just 11 Dividend Kings that generated a better 10-year CAGR than the S&P 500. The best Dividend King was S&P Global with a CAGR of nearly 20%. Right behind it was Parker Hannifin with a CAGR of 19.35%. And while S&P Global had the best 10-year CAGR, Parker Hannifin has actually generated quite impressive returns more recently. It has a 5-year CAGR of 27.21% and a 3-year CAGR of 27.84%. In 2023, it posted a return of 60.81%, and last year it was up 39.58%. Another great Dividend King was Grainger, with a 10-year CAGR of 17.23%, and an even more impressive 5-year CAGR of 27.13%, and a 3-year CAGR of 28.04%. In 2023, Grainger was up by more than 50%, and last year it generated a return of 28%. Another great Dividend King was AbbVie, with a 3-year CAGR of 13%, a 5-year CAGR of nearly 20%, and a 10-year CAGR of 15%. And AbbVie actually offers one of the better dividend yields amongst all of the Dividend Kings. A surprising inclusion in the top 10 list on the total return chart here was Walmart, with a 3-year CAGR of 25%, a 5-year CAGR of 19.71%, and a 10-year CAGR of 14.45%. Much of the reason for these excellent compounded annual returns is the return Walmart generated last year. The stock finished the year up nearly 74%. We can also see that while some of the Dividend Kings have excellent 10-year CAGRs, they do have sour patches as well. S&P Global, for example, has a 3-year CAGR of just 2.71%. Lowe's has a 3-year CAGR of just 0.39%. Dover Corporation's 3-year CAGR is 2.45%. And Illinois Toolworks has a 3-year CAGR of just 3.3%. Another very important metric for dividend growth investors is the dividend growth rate, of course. And amongst all of the Dividend Kings, Lowe's has the best 10-year dividend growth rate at 18.56%. And in total, we have 10 Dividend Kings that have a 10-year dividend CAGR above 10%. And of these 10, only 5 have maintained that double-digit CAGR over the last 5 years. Amongst the best dividend growth Dividend Kings, AbbVie and Hormel sport the best dividend yields, AbbVie at 3.64% and Hormel at 3.68%. Some of the other Dividend Kings are pretty average, like Illinois Toolworks at 2.4%, ADP at 2.15%, Abbott Labs and Lowe's just shy of 2%, Nordson 1.5%, Commerce Bankshares 1.72%, Parker Hannifin just about 1%, and S&P Global just shy of 1%. If you'd like to take a closer look at all of the Dividend Kings, I did share a free link to this spreadsheet in a prior episode, and I'll leave another link to it in the description below. If you'd like to know more about my quality scores, you can check out my free newsletter, Quality at a Fair Price. In my latest article, I provided some more quality score analysis. That analysis was based on my high-quality investable universe, and let's just say the returns were much more generous. I'll leave a link to the newsletter in the description below if you'd like to check it out. Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. See you next time.